I landed a job at Zalando in 2021 as a principal product designer. I went through the classical 3-stage interview process: portfolio deep dive, whiteboard challenge, and the culture fit interviews. And this is my third video about the last stage of this interview process. I recommend you to watch previous 2 videos I have on my channel to get the full picture. My name is Ines, my channel is about UX design and landing a job. Subscribe if you want to receive more videos like that. Now, if you have forgotten, I did all the interview stages in one day, because at that time at Zalando we had so-called hiring days, when we tried to hire candidates within 24 hours. And by the third interview, I was really tired and exhausted. And I knew it back then, and I can confirm it now, that the culture fit interview is the most complex interview to prepare to, because you never know what questions will come. And if you watched my previous videos, you might remember that my English was not so good. I maybe had around B2 level. And the lower your language skill and the longer you speak the language, the more prone to mistake you are, because your brain is really overwhelmed. So my nervousness started to rise. And because I knew it is impossible to prepare to the culture fit interview, I just did not know what to do with my nervousness. And in order to do at least something, I reminded myself about the company values. And it turned out to be a really good decision. I will get into this later. But first, this was my situation in the beginning of the interview. I was nervous, I was tired and overwhelmed. So the interview started. And maybe because of my condition, I felt a real tension between me and the interviewer. The person was not like directly unfriendly. I now know that they were just calm and neutral, but for me it genuinely felt that they are not interested in this interview in the beginning. And because of that, I started making numerous mistakes in my English. I started becoming more self-conscious about that, and the interview felt endless. But let's get to the questions that I was asked. Again, as with the previous video with the whiteboard challenge interview, I can't unfortunately give you the exact questions I received, because that would be unethical. I'm working in this company now and I know the process, but I have come up with questions that closely resemble the ones that I received there. Now, first, I was asked, how did I use data in one of my projects? Luckily, I have a project where data was a big part of it, and I have explained this project just recently on the portfolio deep dive interview. I was explaining this interview type in the first video in this series. Again, go there and watch it if you didn't. But we went really in depth into this topic. I was asked to explain and provide my view on like almost all product KPIs that exist. And honestly, I did not like this part because it felt like I'm taking an exam and not a job interview. And another problem was that I actually did not know the names of all of the product KPIs and metrics in English, because previously I only worked with data in my native language. Yes, many metrics, they have the same name in all of the languages, but also some of them were really unique, and I had to find a way to rephrase and to explain what I mean. In many situations I felt lost in my explanations, to be honest, and that's why that raised my nervousness even higher. And just a reminder, I had 12 years of experience in UX design by that time, and I also have a degree in economics, but it was hard even for me. Maybe I have received this question because I was interviewing to a really high position as a principal product designer. Maybe as a junior designer you would never encounter this question, but I really recommend everybody now to take a look at the UX lingo before this interview type, especially if English is not your first language and you studied UX design in your native one. But anyway, I felt dumb at this point. I really felt the limits of my English skills. And the interviewer stayed neutral during this conversation, and I read it as the negative sign. Now I know that interviewers are actually encouraged to stay neutral, so not to mislead the candidate. But I deciphered this neutral expression as a negative expression, and it discouraged me even more. Luckily, the next question was less tricky. If I had to write an article about the future of UX design, what would that be about? And that felt immediately as a question that is easier to answer, because I like to talk about the future of UX design. At 2021, we did not have AI, we did not have such technologies, but we still had a lot to talk about. And I also knew that for these types of questions, there is no right or wrong. Whereas when you talk about UX metrics, yes, you have to know the basis and you have to demonstrate that. With the questions like this, when you are asked to talk about the future of something, we are mostly interested in how you can build your storytelling and how broad is your knowledge. And because I like this topic, I lost track of time. I felt completely at ease. I felt competent to talk about that. And the interviewer also felt an interest into it. And it finally started to be an open conversation. And if my stress was really at peak when we were talking about metrics, here I was calm. And that helped me a lot. I wish I'd used some of the calming techniques at the beginning of the interview, but I didn't. And while answering this question, I was referring to company values. For example, one of the Zalando's values is default to transparency. And whatever it means in practice, I made sure that I say that the future of UX design is transparency. Transparency when it comes to privacy, user data, and so on. So it might sound like I was tricking the system, but first of all, I made it sound natural. I did not quote. And second, I really kind of believe into what I say. And the trick here is actually to sound authentic. You need to believe in what you are saying, otherwise you will sound robotic. And although in many industries that might be okay and even expected, but I have a feeling that in UX design that might not land well. Because the field stays really informal and we appreciate that people are staying themselves because creativeness comes from this deep authenticity. That's my view on things. You might disagree with me on this, but I only do such things when I know what I'm saying, when I believe in what I'm saying. And I had a feeling that it really made the trick. I don't know, it felt like the interviewer heard important keywords. I just really don't know how to place it differently. And I think it really made up for the bad impression that I might have left after the first question. By the way, if you like this video so far, give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. It's important for me and for YouTube algorithms. And we are moving on. Then I was asked the last question. Tell me something you learned from working with someone one-on-one. And honestly, that felt like a really tough nut. I had no ideas to start with. Unlike the second question, I did not think a lot about the managerial experience. Yes, I had the managerial experience before in my previous company, that's why I was probably asked this question, but still, it felt like I have no answer. So what I did is that I made a pause. I said, this is such an interesting question, thank you for asking that, let me think about that. Basically, I was buying myself time to think through the answer, and that really helped. I gave the answer like, when talking to someone one-on-one, I felt surprised that the information can be easily lost in communication, and something that feels obvious for a manager cannot be so transparent to the employee. I also gave an example when the team has to pause the project and start on something completely different. And for me at that time, it felt it is a very logical and well-explained decision. But the designer in the team was frustrated and angry because they did not understand why we did this, and they felt it is their fault that the project was paused. And this is where I realized that communication skills are the most important skills for the design manager, blah blah. Now, I think it was a fairly good answer. It was good that I took a pause and that I gave an example. And overall, the hiring was a success because I have this job up until now. But if they were doubting about hiring me, this was because of this last interview, and especially because of the first question that I answered, or rather did not answer probably. After this interview, I was completely exhausted. I could not do anything else. I was just sitting on my couch and reliving the whole conversation. But luckily, only 20 minutes after I finished with my last interview, I received an email that I am hired. And I was so relieved. I was so happy. The energy went back to me. I was dancing. So that was really a good feeling. And of course, it was not like they lived happily ever after. No job is perfect. I also had to massively improve my English because I felt that I struggled mostly because of that. If I had had good English skills back then, I would not have been so nervous, and I think the interview could have gone a bit better. But anyways, this is how it was. And now, as I'm working as a principal product designer, I'm also interviewing for the company. This is a big part of my job description, and this is what I genuinely love doing. And you might be thinking right now, well, she was very senior, it was easy peasy for her. Yes, she struggled because of her English skills, but I am really junior, and what can I learn from all of that? I can tell you that a lot of things, they apply to juniors as well. Because if you are invited to a job interview, that means that your portfolio is enough for the opening that they have. And this is where your communication skills, your storytelling, they come forward. And the requirements actually don't differ from seniors to juniors. And I already have a video on this channel why I think UX designers are failing to land the job. I recommend you to watch it for the deep dive, but in the context of this conversation, what helped me really to land this job is that first, I came prepared. I made sure I know and understand the company values. I made sure I know the product, and that helped me through the whiteboard challenge and on the culture fit. Second, I did not rush with my answers. Yes, sometimes I did not answer perfectly, but I was taking pauses before answering crucial questions. And I can see it almost every time I interview a person that they just don't think through the answer and they shoot it right away. And two things are happening in this situation. First, their answer is really hard to follow. Second, they miss certain points, and then after the interview, they might think, oh, I should have told this, I should have told that. If they spend additional minute on thinking through the answer, they might give a better one, I'm sure. And you don't have to be a senior or a principal, you don't have to have 13 years of experience to make this work. And third, admittedly, yes, English is a problem for many. I did really my best to go through this interview, but if I were approaching this task right now, I would have spent more time learning my English skills and perfecting my storytelling in English. Because while working with people, we want to make sure that our communication works perfectly, that we are not losing important information, and that the communication is just effective and saves everyone time. And many candidates, they don't make it because their communication skills are not enough. And being a senior, having a lot of years of experience can maybe help you partially to overcome those communication challenges, but still you have to develop this skill separately. What I would probably do right now if I had to go through this task again is that I would hire a mentor or a coach and to do mock interviews before the actual interview. That helps to gain confidence, improve English, learn some useful vocabulary, and so on. Because the storytelling eventually is a king of job interviews. And one more piece of advice I would give myself back then, and I'm giving you now. Try to stay calm when an interviewer is neutral. Neutral does not mean that they are negative. They might try to be professional. And also this neutral face expression is different in different cultures. So if the person seems grumpy, they might not really mean that. And I know it is extremely hard, and I myself, when I'm interviewing, I make sure that I smile, that I ask open questions, that I nod, but not everybody does this. And the best you can do in this situation is to imagine that you are talking with a friend. Maybe try different techniques, try to smile, try to make a joke somehow. It might not always be possible, but it just will make your job interview easier. And hopefully you might even have good time despite of the other person's behavior. So that was my hiring process at Zalando. Let me know in the comments what my next video should be about. Maybe I need to dive deeper into certain topics. I'm really looking forward to see what do you think about that. And if you want to receive more videos like that, because I'm definitely gonna talk more about finding a job in UX design and building good communication skills, give me thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. I see you in the next video.